again. Today for a change, we're not going to be talking about any books, but we're going to be talking about a movie that I really like. It's Castaway. I think many of you know this movie. I actually saw it when I was still a little kid. I didn't really understand it very much, but I saw it, but I completely forgot it, and I asked my dad if I could watch it again yesterday, and so I watched it. It stars Tom Hanks. The director is Robert Zemeckis, and he actually also co-produced the movie, and I really liked it, and today I'm going to be talking about that movie. Now, before I start with my review on what I thought about the movie, let me tell you a little bit of the backstory. So the main character is called Chuck Noland, who is naturally Tom Hanks, and he is actually a worker at FedEx who is extremely obsessed about sending all the packages on time, and when the employees don't send it on time, he gets very mad and he tells them that everything needs to happen on time. He is also in a relationship with a lady called Kelly Frears, who is the actress Helen Hunt. And basically the story is that one moment, like, they have the FedEx has to send packages to another country, but it's already a little late. So Chuck Noland goes with a couple of pilots to that country to deliver all of the packages. But the problem is, the plane, suddenly something goes haywire and something goes wrong, and the plane crashes in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. But he luckily got a lifeboat, but that's not going to help him because he's in the middle of the biggest ocean in the entire world. So he actually drifts and drifts away, and when he wakes up the next day, he's actually stranded on a big island. Now, he was just stuck there, and the story basically goes on about how he lives there. We'll be discussing more about that later on in the video. But for now, I want to give my first impressions. I have not watched that many Tom Hanks movies because I don't really watch English movies that grown-ups acted in. But this was the first ever Tom Hanks movies that I've watched. And wow, his acting is so good. I really like this performance. It's very rare that people actually act so realistic. It's like he was really stranded on an island. That's how you felt when you look at the movie. When I first saw him on the island, I felt so much empathy. I got the same feeling he had. He was acting so realistically. That was my first impression on the movie, naturally, because, Chuck Noland is the main character. The next part that I really liked about the movie is how they pictured the survival. It was really like you were stranded, not just because of Tom Hanks' realistic acting, but also because the island, you could literally feel like you were living in that place. It was really interesting to see how he set up his camp and how he hunted for animals to eat food. It was all very interesting. But the part that I liked the most was that he was trying all day to make fire. He got 2 sticks and he was constantly rubbing. He was so mad because he got hurt many times when doing it, and he got a lot of blood, and he was screaming. He was throwing all of his things. He was so mad, and suddenly when the fire came, he was so happy. He was screaming and oh yes, fire! And it was a very joyful moment. So when I watched that scene, I thought about one thing. If somebody is so happy to create something that another human has already created, so something like fire is so happy, he's so happy about it. But I wonder how people must have felt when they'd accidentally created fire. But apparently they just thrown a rock at another rock, and somehow coincidentally a fire had started. I don't know how humans would have felt. They would have been so happy that they'd finally they'd seen something. I wonder how would you feel if you had created fire yourself on accident? Wow, that was amazing to just watch, man. Chuck Noland picks up a couple of FedEx packages from the sea, and he looks through all of them to see if they can help with the surviving and all, because he is stranded on an island. But in one of those packages, he finds a volleyball with the name Wilson written on it, and apparently it was some sports good that was to be in the package, gone to someone else in another country, but he had it now. And when he was trying to make fire and all that stuff, he got hurt, and he saw the volleyball, and he actually got his hand full of blood, and he put it on Wilson. And when he took his hand away, the Wilson was like a red figure, with 2 eyes and a nose and a smile. And when he looked at it, he was kind of he didn't know what to do, because he just created some imaginary thing, and he was just looking at it what am I supposed to do with this? And then And then he started talking with it. He started eventually becoming friends with it, having imaginary conversations. Wilson started to become his only friend on sea. And one day, the story goes on for a while about how he's on the island. And on one day, Wilson like drifts away. He like Chuck Nolan loses Wilson. He goes away. And then when you see Chuck Nolan crying over Wilson, he's like so sad because he spent so much time with Wilson, and when he's gone, he's like so sad. So the point they were trying to get at that moment is that life is so meaningless, right? Like every time someone dies, we all cry for them, but you know they won't come back. And then after some days, we regenerate kind of, and we become better. Like that was like a very beautiful moment, like how like an imaginary friend drifted away and he was like shouting for it. I think after that moment, all the movies about being stranded somewhere always had this little friend where people were sad about. It's honestly so beautiful, that moment of Wilson drifting away. And like I remember it so well. Chuck Nolan was screaming, "Wilson, forgive me, I'm sorry." Wow, you definitely have to watch the movie just for Wilson. It was amazing. Actually, if you don't know, we called our car's name is actually Wilson because like Chuck Nolan carries Wilson wherever he goes, and we think it's kind of a symbolization if we call our car Wilson because he takes us everywhere and he's like our imaginary friend. But anyways, let's move on Wilson. If I have to talk about Wilson, I'll just end up crying. So I don't want that to happen on camera. But let's talk about what Chuck Nolan did when he came back to the real world, because he did actually come back in the end. I mean, you might think that's a spoiler, but it's actually not, because naturally that's what happens in every movie like this. So when he comes back, he actually looks around at the normal world. Like everyone thought he was dead. They had a funeral about him. His relationship, Kelly Frears, had actually been married to another person. And you know, everything was kind of different when he came back. And the FedEx people like made a big party that he was back because they'd been thought he dead for like 4 years and they were so shocked to see him back. There was a giant party. And like, Chuck Nolan felt so uncomfortable between all those people. Everyone was acting so artificial, like they were all normal humans. He kept thinking about Wilson and how the life there was when he was completely alone, stranded on that island. And it was so weird just being with those people again. And when those people left his house from the party, he actually looked around at all the food that had been wasted. And only Chuck Nolan knows how much value each food has, because like each food, it could be like your only source of life, you know. He has come from a stranded island. So he looked at us wasted food and he was like, oh my god, these people, man. And then he picked up, like, I don't know what they're called yet, but you know, one of those little tubes on which you click and then fire comes out? Yeah, well, he picked up one of those tubes, and when fire came out, he was like, it's this easy to create a fire. He'd spent literally an entire day rubbing stones and sticks and whatever just to make fire, and just one single click in a second, and fire just came out of the tube. He was literally so mad at looking at that. And when he went to Kelly Frears' house that night, she still had the car on which she and him had drove when they were still together. And he looked at that car key and he thought of it as a knife, because he'd been using, like, you guys know that rolling boots, like he took in like those little short blade under it, and he used that as the knife to cut out coconuts and stuff in the wildlife. So when he saw that key, the first thing he thought was, oh my god, this is like a knife. And he was like, so he thought the near life is so easy, everybody's so artificial, everything just seems too easy, and like he just found it so weird to just be suddenly back. And I can totally agree with him, because like if everything is, he's been in such a big struggle like this, and he suddenly comes back to an easy life, well, I would also feel kind of strange, you know. Now, in the entire movie, there was this one dialogue that immediately became my favorite when I first heard it. And naturally, getting a favorite dialogue in a movie is actually very rare, because as we all know, the last dialogues in all those sentimental movies are always like so heart-touching. But this one genuinely made me so like motivated, and it's amazing. I have to share this with you guys. So basically, when he was stranded on that island, he had actually tried to commit suicide because he thought it was over. He thought he couldn't do anything on that island, that no one would save him. But naturally, he had to test it first, because if he just went and killed himself, then something could go wrong and he would still be alive. And he just tested it. And when he tested it, the rope on which he was going to hang himself fell down and everything went wrong. And then he looked at that, and then he realized that he didn't even have control over his own death. He didn't even have control over his own death. He didn't know what to do. But he then slowly started to realize that he had more control over his life and trying to survive. So the lesson he learned there was you should keep breathing. But the way he said it was very amazing. I tried to hang myself, but then the rope fell down. And I was sad because I realized I didn't even have control over my own death. But then that's when I learned my lesson. I have to keep breathing. I should always wait for that one chance that's about to come. I should always be ready. There is always that one wave that will come and pick me up and bring me to the normal world. I should always be prepared. That dialogue, man. It's like you can match that with our usual life. So many people are sad that they want to kill themselves, but you have to keep breathing. There will always be that one rush of hope that comes to you. And naturally, I think a lot of you are thinking the same thing as me right now. We're all stuck in our house. It's like each house is like a separate island. We're all stranded away from each other, but a wave of hopeness is about to come. There will be that one wave that comes and pushes us into the sea, into the normal world. We'll be gone from this stranded island, this house that we're always living in. There will always be that one last hope, guys. I think this is one of the most biggest reasons I made a review on Castaway, because the moral in the end is just so good. Like, you should always keep breathing and be prepared. The corona days will go away and we'll all be fantastic, is what I'm trying to get the point here. But anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please remember to like, share and subscribe. Make sure to stay in home and don't do anything stupid. And it's me, Nammy.